I am in my house, as you can see, because it's a little chilly and rainy today. I don't really want to be on my balcony much. Today we're going to be doing a tasting of Tie Guan Yin. Oh man, this is killing me. Hold on. Let's try this again. Discard that. This is part of the problem with being in China. This is just live issues are just part of the game. Internet issues are part of the game. So it's really, really frustrating, to be honest. It's just like, you just couldn't. Oh man, it's super frustrating. And I'm assuming that having two lives going at once is not doing it any favors. I'm sorry, hold on. I apologize for the slow start on YouTube live. You guys can just, I'm sure you guys will just skip this. I gotta send him some tea. All right, let's try this again. All right, we're trying this again. Hi, Johnny. Oh, you have not. Well, you might have just peed over there. So, hi. Okay. Let's do some stacking so we can see what we're drinking. That's much better. That's gonna fall. All right. Bam, and we're back. So that was a quick internet issue, but we are back. I think I can tilt that. Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. So today we're going to try something we have not tried in a long time. We're going to be trying Tie Guan Yin. Hey, pumpkin. Johnny. They might go a little nuts in a second. Johnny actually hasn't had his morning walk. Everyone else has. Johnny hasn't, and I can tell he wants to go. Thank you. I always have to. It's interesting getting haircuts in China because even when you show them the picture, they will always kind of automatically switch it to more of a Chinese style. What's popular in China. So actually, when he first gave it to me, he kind of blew it out, like he took a blow dryer to it and a bit of a blowout. But yeah, they're good. They're good here. All right, so we're gonna drink two Tie Guan Yins today. The first one is your standard, just a Tie Guan Yin. The second one is pretty fucking special, actually, and I'm choosing that one to go second, so that I'm gonna do a few steeps of this one, and then we're gonna talk about the second one. Because the second one is, yeah. Oh, this is not a roasted. Okay. Hold on. I did not get what I thought I was getting. Either that or she did not. Let's see. Yeah. And it's funny, I have to show them pictures, and I've been honest. To be honest, I've been showing them the Peaky Blinders pictures because I want that sort of haircut, and I don't quite get that. But one time, oh my God, I told the barber to do whatever he wanted, and it was so bad. Yeah, so let's talk about Tie Guan Yin. Tie Guan Yin. Oh man, Tie Guan Yin. I've been to Anxi a bunch of times. If I had to list the number of times I've been to an area that I haven't lived in, first is Wuishan. Close second is Anxi. And the only reason I haven't gone to Anxi more is because it's just so far away. It's like 5 hours by high-speed train, and then a bus. Yeah, and then a bus. Like you go 5 hours by high-speed train gets you to the nearest city, like Quanzhou or Xiamen, and then you got to take a train to Anxi city, and then you got to take a bus to the village, whatever village you're going to. When I was living in Huangshan, so still to this day, it's a solid day of travel. It's a full day of travel. And that's why I didn't go more, because if I only went, you couldn't go for a weekend, you couldn't go for a day. It's a train to a bus, and even then, sometimes you have to motorcycle up the mountain. This is nice. And so Tie Guan Yin, but the whole, there is truth to that. And I think, Tie Guan Yin, Anxi is, you go to a town in Anxi, and you can go to basically any town. And you get these mountain villages, and you look around, and it's just tea trees everywhere. Very, very few places. Every now and then you might get a little splotch of something, but most places, Wuishan, Huangshan, Ximen especially Huangshan, you get woods, nature, and then there's a plot of tea fields. Anxi is the opposite. You have tea trees, and then you have plots of nature. Oh yeah, it's Suzhou is incredible. Yeah, Suzhou is actually very unique. I almost think, and I started in a blog post about the differences in Suzhou and other places. I'll probably finish that this week. Suzhou and Dongting is really, really unique for that, especially just because of how much Bilochuan sells for. Though, okay, I think I know why though. Hold on. Because on one hand, it's unique because how much Bilochuan sells for. It sells for 5 times the price of Tie Guan Yin on average. Not as expensive it's more expensive than Maofeng. 5 times the price of Tie Guan Yin. Not as expensive of Yansha, actually, not even really close to Yansha. Yansha is stupid expensive. And so you would think they would want to maximize, but they don't. Especially because also the Bilochuan region is so fucking small. Like you stand on the mountain, you stand on the top of Dongting, and you can see where it stops. You have the small little mountain, and then there's city or suburbs, towns next to it. Like it's not like like you go to Wuishan, like you have the core region, but then you have kind of tea fields surrounding that. The mountains have tea. But no, Suzhou, you have an island, and you have a peninsula. You have this one mountainous area, and then it just stops. So very, very limited space-wise. But that being said, I think a major part of why Bilochuan is so restricted is they haven't really maximized too much, is because Bilochuan is handmade. Bilochuan is basically completely handmade 100% of the time. I mentioned in previous videos, I met someone who was trying different machines and trying to mechanize Bilochuan, but you really can't. Even Longjing can be mechanized. There is a lot more mechanization in Longjing than Bilochuan. Like Bilochuan is nothing. I've never seen a machine-made Bilochuan. And so what that means is that in a particular day, you can only make so much tea. And so if they have fields that are too big, it's just going to be a waste. It's just going to go to waste because they can't make that much tea. They can only make so much tea. And it's also, like I mentioned, they have low quartz, and it's actually low quartz season starting, or Yangmei. I forget what the English for Yangmei is. But then they have other plants that produce produce income. So, yeah, very, very different. But no, Anxi is interesting, and I've talked to Anxi people. I've been there a bunch of times, 6 times at least. I've gone down there 6 times. Always came back empty-handed. Came really close once. One time I came really, really close to finding something. But like I got samples from a guy, and his most expensive sample, which was like 10 times the price of a normal Tie Guan Yin, was a lot of the flavor profile I'm looking for. And so I messaged him and I was like, I want this one. And then what he sent me was completely fucking different. Just completely fucking different. And so, but it was just like, it's there, it's out there somewhere. If I know how to talk about it, if I know what to ask for. But yeah, but kind of on that same note of, like, yes, the soil is not great, but I think it's more than that. I think that Tie Guan Yin making is mechanized enough that Tie Guan Yin makers make a ton of tea. I think there's the soil, but then there's the making. That you go to a tiny house. You go to a house, like, no one's making handmade. Nobody's making handmade Tie Guan Yin, and I think a lot of it has to do with right now the price of Tie Guan Yin is really, really low, and so like a Tie Guan Yin sells for. I have seen some crazy. I have seen $20 a pound. For fresh, small house-made Tie Guan Yin, really doesn't sell for that high at all. And so they have small machines. We're not talking big factories, but they take the leaves, they take it from this machine, they put it into that machine, and then they put it into that machine, and then they have it rest. And so that's going to have a lot to do with the quality too. That nobody's really, there's not much there's not the same level of artisanalship. That being said, we're going to talk about this tea in a second. This tea is actually pretty interesting. This is actually an interesting tea. That being said, what's interesting, okay, so you also have to understand that Tie Guan Yin was one of the first Chinese teas to kind of explode in popularity. I think it was like in the 80s, early 90s. Tie Guan Yin became really popular. And if you think about, and so as somebody who's from the region, actually the woman whose family this tea comes from, what she explained is it used to be, when she was growing up in the 80s, you had 3 households. And everyone had fields. They all have fields, but they used it for different things. This family did one thing, this family did tea, this family did another thing. And everyone was about the same, income-wise. And then the family who was making tea suddenly started making a bunch of money. And the 2 families on the other side were like, I can make tea, I want to make a bunch of money, like I want a good income. And so they started making tea. And so you had families who, for a long time, hadn't really made tea, not like that, suddenly devoting all of their resources and land to tea. Makes sense. But that obviously did things to quality and did things to the market. But the interesting thing is that when the last time I went to Anxi, and I went to Jiandou, this was years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. I was talking to some of the local people and some of the younger people, because I went in Chinese New Year, and so there's a lot of young people there. I was talking to some of the young people, and they were like, "Yeah, my dad did tea, but I'm not gonna do tea. I'm gonna go to the cities. I'm gonna go work." So what you're seeing is for say in the 80s, we had a lot of families going into tea, but now with new opportunities for young folks, they're not really doing tea as much anymore, which is not something you're going to see anytime soon. I don't think. We're not going to see a giant spike in. We're not going to see a sudden change in the tea market, but I think this could affect the Tie Guan Yin market in the future, and it could affect it positively if you have less people making tea and this, that, and the third. So I think that's very interesting. Tie Guan Yin Anxi is on my places to go, places to live down there, really spend some time, and really figure out what the hell happened and how did Anxi. I remember I was walking through Gande, which is the most famous location for Tie Guan Yin, the most famous village, and so I'm walking through this village, and actually no, this was the last time I went. Because this is actually, I learned a lot this trip, because I used to go in holidays, because oh my god, it was May holiday. It was this week actually. It was Labor Day. Anyway, so I go on holidays because that's when I have the most time to do the traveling. And so what that means
it's 11 o'clock.
People, the tea farmers' sons and daughters who have moved to the city, they come back. And so this is actually when you get the most English speakers, because this kid, good student, learned English, went to the city to get a job. And so last time I was there, and so there's more than once where I've been walking down the road of this mountain village where, a lot of the older folks can't read or write. They don't know Mandarin. And somebody would just yell out, "Hey, where you from?" And just, "Hey, how's it going?" Like English. And I'd bump into people about my age who spoke English. Anyway, and then I learned a lot through them. Anyway, so this guy speaks English, and we're walking down the main road of the village. And first of all, the mountains are covered in tea trees, but so are, like, when you're walking down the road, so are the areas right next to the road. Like between the houses, there's tea trees. And I've seen this, and other places would do this, but not to the extent that Anxi does this. And he goes, and he's about 20 something, and he goes, "I remember when these were rice fields." Like, he goes, "These used to be rice fields." And he remembers when they took out the rice and put in tea, which is something to say that. Not so much stuff to show for. So, I don't think so. And depending on the vendor, you might have a vendor who is from the region. But I don't think that's the case. If maybe recently, because you got to understand that storing tea wasn't a thing recently. You also have to understand that these are not, there are a lot of people making tea, and I have videos. I wonder if they're on my old Instagram. Motherfucker. Anyway, God, I lost a lot of shit on that old Instagram. Because I spent a week living in Gande with a family, so I really, it's village life. These are village people, and the tea has brought in a certain level of comfort and extra money and luxury and yada yada. But it is village life, and they're farmers in a way. I remember staying. I stayed in this house for a week, and they were in this village. There's no supermarkets, and they bought meat because somebody on a little electric truck came through every day with meat and vegetables. And it was like the ice cream person, basically. She had the little microphone, and she was like, "Fresh meat, fresh meat," and then people would kind of wave her down. I remember sitting in their little tea room, which was like a garage with a dirty tea table and a ton of flies. And I hear this noise, and I look out, and there's the wife killing a goose. That night, we had fresh goose with like goose blood stuff. It was really good. Some of the best food. Love from Chinese food. So they're farmers. And so what that means is that they want to sell their tea. They don't, yes, they are comfortable, but they're not going to, what do you call it? like when you have stocks and you hold on to stocks because you're going to see if the price goes up, spectacle, they're not going to like hold on to a T hoping that the price goes up later. Not on purpose, at least. They're going and obviously there's going to be somebody who does, and if you have enough T and you're whatever, speculate. Good man. They're not really going to speculate because they're trying to make the money and they don't want to risk a crash. And yeah, they're not going to speculate. Larger companies wise, and that depends, I think, on the village. Places like Gandhi, because I think there's like 108 villages. So they say there's 108 villages in Anxi. 108 is an auspicious number in China, especially for tea, actually. And so that is a number that they've probably done some rounding. Like there's 96, and they just kind of, let's call it 108 or some shit like that. But a bunch of small villages in Anxi. And so I think depending on the village, you're going to get different levels of companies. I do know in Jiandou, they sell some tea. Jiandou sold some tea. No, not Jiandou. Longjuan, which is what I'm drinking now, sold some tea to a sold some tea to a company that marked it as Taiwanese tea. Or they blended it with Taiwanese tea. They called it Taiwanese tea. And so they were like, it's Anxi tea. They were very smug about that. They got a good kick out of that. And I know, so I think there's some of that, but in places like Gandhi, which is the most famous village, you do have households are producing their own tea because there's enough people, like you go to Gandhi in the season, traffic, like you can't move down the street because so many people are coming into the city to buy tea. So they don't really need to lease out to a company. I'm seeing. I wonder how much it was a particular. So I'm wondering, since there's less young people. Well, I mean, also Tie Guan Yin is not. I'm trying to understand. I don't remember what I was saying when you wrote that. No, I think because Tie Guan Yin there's not really much talk of aging, which is going to be really ironic in a second when we switch teas. But we're going to talk about that in a second. This tea, by the way, is actually kind of interesting. This tea has a super light roast, and so it's a you'd call it like a. Well, I think with less. I think the people flooding the market with, for lack of a better term, crap. With less people making tea, you're going to get a less saturated market. And you're going to get, they're not, because that's the other thing about Tie Guan Yin. And I was talking to somebody about this. Someone explained this to me, that like a big part of the Tie Guan Yin market, since there's so much at the market, there's a lot of be cheaper than the other guy. There's more focus on having, Yansha, they don't focus on the price as much. They focus on the tea and they put a price to that. But Tie Guan Yin, because it is a little more mechanized and there are a little bit more, there's more competition, and it's different in ways. There's a little bit of try and get. It's that sort of market for sellers. And so maybe if that becomes less saturated, people that could, oh man, I'm killing my battery here. Sorry. I gotta turn my phone sideways because I am. See if I can do it without turning my phone sideways. I gotta turn sideways. Sorry. Um, I wonder, if I can do this maybe? Hold on. So I went through like, in those 5 minutes, I burned 10% battery, which only leaves me with 10%. So I'm trying to. On that one. All right. Can't really see the tea anymore. Oh my God, there are no traditional makers. And so what's the other thing that's going to play into this, and once again, a lot of what I'm saying, we're going to hit a but soon. We're going to hit the exception soon. But right now, I'm speaking very broadly. And I've had the conversation with other people who've walked through Anxi and seen this is kind of fact. Nobody's really making traditional. No one's doing the foot road. No one's really. I don't think I've ever seen a charcoal baked. Everything's electronic baked. And partially because kind of going back to, and it's kind of almost this weird loop, because you have, a family will have a bunch of tea trees. You have all these tea trees that were planted because of this, that, and the third, and they don't want to waste, and there's just not enough time to do traditional, because you want to process all these leaves. And the interesting thing that I heard is that you even, I was talking to somebody in Longjuan about Gande, and we're talking about the differences, and I was like, yeah, in Gande, life's a little bit slower. They kind of slow down. There's more tea tastings. They're always. I remember at night in Gande, households generally made their own tea, and then at night, neighbors would come to each other's houses and taste the teas, do side by sides. It was crazy. It was awesome. But I didn't really see that in Longjuan. In Longjuan, you had slightly bigger factories. Like people would bring their tea to a factory sometimes, and this is slightly bigger, not big factories by any means, but more factory feel maybe. You get like a small house that had 2 or 3 machines in it, sort of thing. 2 or 3 machines going at once instead of Gande, which is just a normal house with 1 machine in the back, 1 or 2 machines in the back. And I was talking to people about Longjuan about that. I was like, yeah, in Gande, they tend to go a little bit slower, yada, yada. And they go, yeah, Longjuan has less tea trees. They just have less fields. It's a smaller area, not as mountainous as Longjuan. And so Longjuan just has more tea trees, and they have more tea trees to process. And so they have to almost go through things a little bit quicker. They can't really do as much, and Gande doesn't really do that much. At least not the family I stayed with. And so you don't really see a lot of traditional making, partially because it takes too long, partially also because of the price and the market. And so the other thing that could help Tie Guan Yin right now is the general market of the general new desire for more traditional teas, more. And I mentioned in Huangshan, I'm starting to see this a little bit, where people are, I haven't seen a lot of 100% handmade Maofeng this year, but I've seen more than last year. I think last year I saw 1 person making it. This year I saw 3 people. I saw Shimens being sun-dried on a roof, around the basket, And so I think the general market, as people have a little bit more money to spend and they're a little bit more of this and that, the market for traditional teas could go up. And we're being loose with traditional, but we'll call it artisanal. We'll just call it artisanal teas. And let's just say that teas that they took time and they crafted. They didn't just go through the steps. There's not a lot. There's not as much of the artisanal stuff going on. But so I'm going to quickly talk about this tea, and then we're going to move on to the next tea, because the next tea is going to be really, really interesting. I think we're ready to talk about the interesting tea. This tea is actually kind of nice. This I'm going to talk about this person in a second. This is the but. So I've said all these things and I've made these kind of broader claims. After we're gonna now time for the but. Now time for the okay. But on the micro, there are people. This tea is interesting because you have generally this green of you. It tastes like a green tea Guan Yin. You know, it's light, it's aromatic, but there's this level of roasting, and it's interesting because it's a super soft roasting, super soft, very subtle. Not very. It's a subtle roast, but it just adds this complexity. It just adds this level, this like. It's actually kind of nice. It's actually kind of interesting. It just you. First of all, green tequanyans can be very aromatic and very perfumey. This you could tell just kind of pulls that down. Like okay, kind of reins it in a little bit. Kind of reins in the whole tea, and it just adds this. Let's do one more steep. It adds this just level of. That's really nice. It's really it's a very just adds a little bit to the body, just adds a little bit to the depth. It controls some aspects of it. Um, it's actually one of the better Tiaquanians I've had in a while. I'm not gonna lie. Just because it's comfortable to drink. Tiaquanians can be a little rough on the stomach, which is actually a thing that the local government had to outlaw some ways of making tea because they were bad for the stomach. Um, and you would drink some of the really long, what do you call it? Fermentations had to be outlawed. Like they had one that was called To Swan, which is fermented for like 3 fucking days. It was ridiculous. 2 or 3 fucking days. It was shipped like rest, and what it produced this very sour tea. But you'd get it sometimes and it would hit the stomach and you'd be like, that's a little rough on the stomach. This is pretty nice on the stomach. This is one of the better Tiaquanyans I've had in a while. So let's talk about this Tie Guan Yin. And I'm going to do a quick Google search before I continue because I want to see if this person is in the. I don't know if this person is in the West. Is it Lockjoy? Also, forget. Oh man, what is her name? I know her name, but what's the name of her? All right. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Lucky Joy Tea. I don't know what she's. So this, I'm checking something before I say anything. There it is. Okay. So this is Yen Rojas. Yanbin Rojas from Lucky Joy Tea. Oh, she went. Okay, I see what she did. Oolong. 5 flavors of oolong. Okay. So I'm gonna don't know what she's doing these days. 900. That can't be right. I don't know what that is. All right, so we're gonna talk. And I'll see. I'll shoot her a message. I haven't talked to her in a while. So this is the family of Yenbin Rojas from Lucky Joy Tea. And I know she, and I got in contact with her years ago, right before she started selling tea on the Western market. Because she used to be pretty active in. Okay, let me check one more thing, and then I want to see how active she is. That's what I'm checking. What? Oh, she did get hacked. I remember that. She hasn't really posted since, huh? Okay, Lucky Joy 2022. Okay. 4 days ago. Yes, she's still okay. Okay, so just checking. Yeah. So this is now she has her new thing is Lucky Joy 2022. Right. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Because I was curious. Okay. Yen Rojas, Lucky Joy tea. This is her family's tea, and I actually got connected with her before she started selling tea because her family actually offered their house as a Airbnb. Obviously, it's pre-COVID, so I don't know what's up with that. And yeah, and so Yanbin, crap, what's her name? Yanbin Rojas. Yanbin is she, and I remember, so I went there and I've gone there a couple of times actually, and I've talked to her sister who speaks English, and she said that, and Yanbin is one of these people. She's from the tea regions, but she honestly loves tea, and this is not actually something you see in the tea regions. You see a lot of people, and they grow up with tea, and tea is their job, and tea is their yada yada. And it's kind of just like, oh yeah, tea. You actually don't get a lot of people who really love tea. And this is what the Beetle Twin friend is someone who, once again, really loves tea, really cares about the tea, and wants to make the best tea. And so she's one of these people, and talking to her, I've learned a lot. She's the one who told me the analogy about the houses. So this is her family's tea. It's really nice, and she's done something really cool. Well, and I got to check in again. She's gotten her dad to let part of their fields go wild. She was like, look, this plot, don't touch it. Let it go wild. Let it do something different. And they didn't touch it for about 5 years, I think, 3 or 5 years. And there's a flavor change. And there's a flavor change that, once again, for a category of tea that does not have a lot of flavor changes, it's cool to taste something different from tasting the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So we're going to take this time. I'm going to switch teas. I'm going to switch teas to the interesting tea. So what happened? So I've gone. Like I said, I've stayed with her family on 2 or 3 times by now. I think I've stayed with her family. I've stopped in, and I've lived in their mountain home, because what you're seeing in Anshi, and this is what I saw. You have so they grew up on the mountain, but in recent years, the people on the mountain, you have a mountain, and the mountain has all these small villages. They've started to come down the mountain, and they've kind of conjugated into a slightly bigger village, maybe even a town at the bottom of the mountain. So 3 small villages, everyone moved down, and they conjugated, which offers a lot of benefits from, bigger people and community and safety. it's easier to get a doctor, or if something happens, it's easier to get help. Yeah. But they still have their house on the mountain, and that is something that. So I stayed there, and that was gorgeous. Can't wait to go back. And the family had tea in their house, and this was a tea that, and I remember it was in this room, and it was in this wooden cabinet, and they had this tea, like people would just, it's like everyone has their tea cabinet. But when they moved down the mountain, it seems like this tea just got left behind. Again, it didn't quite get there. It didn't quite come down. I should read that out, actually. Where's my scale? I'm going to turn the screen down for a second. So you have this tea that was on the mountain, and mountain is humid. Like, when I'm talking on the mountain, like, I'm talking the houses, you can go to the roof, because that's where they dry things, from vegetables to laundry. So you're standing on the roof, and I can pull the video. If you actually look at my YouTube, I have videos from Longjuan. You're standing on this roof, and you're watching these clouds of mist go below you. Like, it looks like you're watching clouds go below you. It is proper mountain. Like, she was telling me, her sister was telling me that when, I think when their grandmother